What's going on, guys? It's Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing you a new idea to the channel where we're basically going to be recapping the free agency moves as of 6 p.m. on March 16th. As you guys well know, free agency opened up on Monday. We have moves coming in. We have a bunch of quality signings already up to date. But guess what? It's myself and Bush's job to break each of them down. Corey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, we're gonna go through. We're doing the typical winners and losers, stock up, stock down. I know it's really basic of us to do this, but we do have to do it. And we didn't want to do it like initial reaction or whatever. We wanted to actually dig into kind of a little bit more research and see kind of what they actually mean for fantasy, because it's very simple to just say, oh yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick helps Terry McLaurin. It's like, but how? Like, how does he help him? Like, it is nice to know that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going through these. And as you mentioned, we're probably going to be interrupted with like breaking news while we're recording this. And I'm sure there's going to be a huge signing as soon as we're done recording it. But as of right now, guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Kenny Golladay, Will Fuller, still Chris Carson, they're still on the free agent market. So there's definitely plenty more free agent moves to come. So we're definitely not done yet.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, as we're recording this, apparently Zach Ertz is allowed to seek a trade now.
Okay. All right.
I mean, we'll see what happens there.
So he's going to the Colts, right? Like, that's the only place he's going?
Or the Patriots. No, I'm kidding. With that being said, before we head into all these new moves, I'm going to hit the intro on y'all. Okay, so let's start off. Corey kind of alluded to it in the intro, and that's going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick, former Miami Dolphin quarterback. Has a
one-year team quarterback.
Heck yeah, he's been on what, like 16 teams at this point.
Something like that.
Guess what? He's out in Washington for that Arsenal. He's signing a 1-year, $12 million deal to presumably be their starting quarterback. Bush, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's pretty indicative knowing that he did sign a $12 million deal and they don't really have anyone under contract. Alex Smith was a free agent. I believe they re-signed Taylor Heineke, but it was like to back up money. So we're assuming that Ryan Fitzpatrick will be the quarterback that they roll with this season. Of course, they could always trade up in the draft, or maybe one of these quarterbacks falls to them at 19 and they pull the trigger on a Mac Jones, or maybe even they get up and get like a Trey Lance or something like that. But as of right now, we have to assume Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be the starting quarterback. And as I mentioned, it is good news for Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin has played with Dwayne Haskins, Case Keenum, Alex Smith, and Kyle Allen in his career thus far, and Taylor Heineke briefly. So Fitz is by far the best quarterback he has ever played with. 134 targets that Terry McLaurin had last year, only 99 of which were actually deemed catchable, which ranked number 75 in the NFL in catchable target rate. So this is a dude that has been struggling for quality quarterback play his entire career. He kind of reminds me of a little bit of DeAndre Hopkins early in his career, who was just consistently putting out good seasons, but never great seasons, because he didn't have the quarterback play that like Deshaun Watson when he came in. So 5.2 target quality rating, ranked number 69 in the NFL. Nice. Not to mention, he only had 4 touchdowns, despite being used downfield, being used in the red zone, and having a top 5 air yard share of the Washington offense. So this is only good news for Terry McLaurin. He should have I would say his floor and his ceiling both increased by this move.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick. When he is on his game, he is the definition of a gunslinger. And when you're comparing that to what Washington had on the roster just last year, it's a major improvement. So overall, again, $12 million deal. You bring a guy like Fitzpatrick in. He's kind of that prototypical bridge quarterback, because Washington's in a position where they could probably win a good amount of games with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but they don't have that young quarterback of the future, which they're probably going to try to position themselves for within these next couple of years. Regardless, we're looking at it from a 1-year perspective. We're looking at it for the 2021 season. Ryan Fitzpatrick will significantly help Terry McLaurin's stock compared to what he was dealing with before. Alex Smith, Taylor Heineke, whatever freaking random.
Honestly, I think this is the best possible move they could have done. Honestly, I think he was the best quarterback available. Maybe Jameis Winston, but you probably would have had to pay up more for him, and it sounded like he wanted to stay in New Orleans the whole time. So I actually think this is the best move they could have done, aside from trading for Watson or Wilson, which would have cost you like crazy amount of draft capital. I think this was the right move. It's big time help for Terry McLaurin. like I said, it's probably not going to improve his volume. It'll probably be an efficiency improvement, a target quality improvement. But overall, we have a stock up for Terry McLaurin. I think stock's up on Ryan Fitzpatrick as well. If we're talking from dynasty perspective, this is a guy that is going to start games. And I mean, that's probably true every single year, but we know for sure now he's definitely going to be starting some games. So definitely a win now type of move if you're in a super flex league, if he's your third quarterback or something like that. Don't hate that for a year.
100%. You could probably get this guy like the 15th round of your startup, and
he's like got a quarterback type of draft capital that you're gonna have to spend on him. So
100%. With that being said, let's get into a younger quarterback that could very well end up turning into that potential franchise type of guy.
He could also turn into a Ryan Fitzpatrick for the rest of the year too.
I mean, oddly enough, they were on the same team just a few years back, and that's going to be Jameis Winston re-signing to a 1-year, $12 million deal with the New Orleans Saints. I mean, I don't need to say much for everybody on Twitter and their mother to absolutely love this move, because at the end of the day here, everybody is just at that stage where we just do not want to see Taysom Hill take another snap. And guess what? By bringing back Jameis Winston, he should be competing for that starting role against Taysom Hill. I mean, if you're talking about the offensive pieces, let's just start off with the two big ones. I mean, Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas are both Kamara for his matters, top 5 at his position. Michael Thomas is at minimum top 10. If Jameis wins the starting role for this offense, expect those guys to keep producing the numbers that they have been. I mean, we saw just last year the effects of a Taysom Hill-led offense on the overall numbers, particularly with Alvin Kamara on the goal line in the receiving game. Well, guess what? If Jameis Winston is quarterback, he will have no problem feeding those two playmakers the ball. So overall, I mean, if you're looking at the just sheer passing volume of the offense, for reference, in seasons that Jameis Winston has started at least 14 games, he's had 530 plus passing attempts in every single one of their seasons. For reference, in the 4 games that Taysom Hill started just this season when Breeze got hurt, he actually had 104 passing attempts, which would have equated to a 416 attempt pace across 16 starts. So if you're just looking at the raw numbers of it,
that's like it's a big difference. And like
it's 114 attempts.
Michael Thomas to get like 130, 150 targets and a 416 passing attempt offense, that's a big number. You need a 30% target share or something like that to achieve something like that. So it's big news for Michael Thomas, especially. I think Alvin Kamara obviously benefits from the fact that Taysom Hill probably isn't going to be stealing every goal line carry from him. But I do think Taysom Hill is going to be involved still in his normal Taysom Hill role that he's been in the last couple of years. For those of you that are wondering, there's a huge contract that came out for Taysom Hill. That is honestly a complete salary cap move. I wouldn't read into those.
It's a hoax
whatsoever. That 4-year, $140 million, that is the biggest mirage of a contract I've ever seen in my life. So don't worry about that number. These two guys will compete for the starting job. That is what's going to happen. Pretty much Sean Payton has said that all offseason that's what's going to happen. And I expect that to be the case. And I expect Jameis Winston to win because he's the better quarterback. So
he's by far the better quarterback.
Yeah,
so overall,
also, if Taysom Hill wins, then what do you do with Jameis Winston? If Jameis Winston wins, you can still use Taysom Hill. So it's a win-win situation to have Jameis Winston be your starting quarterback. So to the next thing that's going to just have everyone shaking their heads.
Yeah. I'll just quickly mention
the entire team, but like 2 segments of this team because they did a lot in free agency.
I'll just say one more thing on Jameis.
What's up?
This is a huge win for him. Staying in a system, in a quarterback nest, as we like to refer to on the channel, that the New Orleans Saints have to accompany with him on this offense. If he gets that starting role, I mean, let's not rule out a potential top 10 type quarterback season for him because he's shown in the past from sheer volume, from sheer big time, big playability that he's able to get the job done. And they got the requisite playmakers to be able to do that. So anyways, let's get into it.
Another quick point on Jameis too, just because I've watched this guy's entire career. He was the quarterback of my team, his first overall pick. Bruce Arians was the worst thing that could have happened to Jameis Winston because Bruce Arians is a gunslinger coach and he had a gunslinger quarterback. Sean Payton was the type of coach that Jameis Winston needed to coach out the turnovers, to coach out the bad decision-making and help him read coverages better and stuff. Because I know a big problem of his, not because of the LASIK, but he'd get picked off by linebackers more than any quarterback I've ever seen because he would just like misread coverages and stuff. So everything that Jameis Winston is going to experience in New Orleans is for the better of his career. And there's a good chance that he becomes the starter for more than just this year. It happens for multiple years, potentially even a long time after that. So He's a guy that is his dynasty stock in particular, maybe not his redraft stock, because I think a lot of people expected this, but his dynasty stock in particular is at an all-time high right now from the past, I don't know, 12 months or so. It's definitely at the highest it's been for a while. So the Patriots, the New England Patriots on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball just absolutely broke the bank. And we're going to start with probably the weirdest thing I've ever seen a team do in free agency, and that's give 2 tight ends top 5 tight end money. So currently the highest paid tight ends in the league, I believe George Kittle and Travis Kelce are at the top of the list, but right after them are Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, both of which were just recently signed by the New England Patriots. And for their own fantasy stocks, for the sake of Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, both of them experience a hit, obviously, because we were under the impression, at least the general public would have been, that these guys were going to either stay with their original teams or they were going to go to a new team with starter money and be the clear-cut starter for that team. Well, we saw that with Jonnu Smith. Everyone was so excited about Jonnu Smith yesterday, but then this morning Hunter Henry is signed, and now no one wants Jonnu Smith anymore.
Nobody wants either of them.
Exactly. They just basically cancel each other out. I'm sure it's a great NFL move for Bill Belichick and the Patriots. We know that they can use 2 tight ends. I'm not going to say Gronk and Aaron Hernandez because that's the laziest comparison ever, but they do know how to use tight ends with differing skill sets. So they're going to use Jonnu Smith as a versatile piece because that's what he offers, and they're going to use Hunter Henry as the more inline red zone type of tight end that they've experienced in the past and that most teams know how to use. So it's a good NFL move, but for their own fantasy stocks, it's definitely not a great move for either guy.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of outlined it. Let's not compare them to the best overall talent at the tight end position we've ever seen in Rob Gronkowski, and for his own matter, who would have been probably a top 5 tight end of the decade if he were to have stayed in the NFL, if he were to have had his head on straight and Aaron Hernandez. Let's just say, though, if you want to compare it to a guy, a tandem like Ertz and Goddard, you can absolutely see something like that.
The skill sets are pretty similar, those guys, too.
100%. Again, you got Jonnu in that type of Goddard role, and you got Ertz, Henry being that type of more security type target. I like it from an NFL perspective. I do think both of them can be fringe tight end 2s, if you will. Like
I honestly think there's an outside shot.
Top 15
guys are tight end 1s. It's just how they get there won't be fun. Like they're much better best ball picks than they are for regular fantasy because these guys are going to be so hard to predict when to start. And one guy's going to catch a touchdown this week. Another guy's going to catch a touchdown the next week. Jonnu might break off a big yards after catch type run. If I have to pick one of them, I would pick Jonnu Smith because I think he got more money. Plus, he also is the more versatile guy, and he's going to get more scheme touches than Hunter Henry will. But if you told me that Hunter Henry outscored him in touchdowns, I wouldn't be surprised at that either. But the issue with both of these guys being on the same team is that they are both good at the same things. Like Hunter Henry is very good in the red zone. Jonnu Smith was very, very efficient in the red zone this past year. Both of these guys have been top of the league in red zone touchdowns and red zone targets, combined 32 red zone targets last year alone. So from the rest of the offense's perspective, this definitely helps Cam Newton, his passing floor, and potentially whoever rookie they bring in if they bring in one. But I actually think this might hurt Damian Harris a little bit as far as the red zone carries go. But this offense is generally one that does run the ball in the red zone, so I'm not totally worried about it from that perspective. But overall, as an offense, they should get more efficient in the red zone as well. But I think the red zone pie will be divided a lot more between passing and running as opposed to last year when they pretty much only ran the ball in the red zone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, regardless, I think it actually takes more of a hit on potentially Cam's rushing output in the end zone. Because let's be honest here, you have 2 tight ends now that could actually contribute in that area of the field. Whereas last year, Cam had like 14 rushing touchdowns?
Yeah, and
it was insane.
From a numbers perspective, you get more points typically in a rushing touchdown than you do in a passing touchdown. So it's actually better for Cam to run the ball in himself than it is to throw it to these tight ends. But yeah, overall, I would say stock up on Cam Newton, especially from his passing output is concerned, and then stock down on both of these tight ends. We definitely wanted better landing spots for both guys. If one of them had landed here, would have been great. But otherwise, not great. We were hoping it was just Jonnu and Hunter Henry went to like the Cardinals or something. Yeah,
for sure. Speaking of the Patriots and moves,
they weren't done.
They were not done because they added 2 separate receivers to the receiving core. You got a guy in Nelson Agholor, 2 years, $26 million, $13 million dollars per fucking, you know what I mean? 13 million per year is just insane for what we really expected and anticipated Nelson Agholor to get. We probably thought what a 7-8.
I mean, the number's not surprising to me. It's surprising who he got paid higher than, but it's not surprising. If you told me Nelson Agholor got 13 million, I actually wouldn't have been shocked that much. But we're going to get to Corey Davis in a second. If you told me Corey Davis got less than Nelson Agholor, I would have been really shocked. But that is what happened. Nelson Agholor did get more than Corey Davis on a per year value, but I believe guarantees wise, Corey Davis got more and his term is longer. But I mean, Agholor did play well. Like not only did he just like get targets and score points for the Raiders, he like actually looked good doing so. So I mean, this is a guy that has talent. He was a first round pick and he's shown it in his career. But to me, this screams a move that like the Patriots would love to do. And it kind of reminds me of when they brought in Mohamed Sanu a little bit. Like I don't have a lot of faith in this move, nor do I have a lot of faith in the Kendrick Bourne signing as well.
Let me just touch up upon that. First of all, like the player himself, the efficiency itself was good last year. I mean, you're talking about Nelson Agholor, nearly 900 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns, 18.7 yards per reception, one of the more efficient receivers in the league. And if you're talking about an effect on Cam Newton has always strived when he has that one field stretcher in his offense that can separate. Nelson Agholor can add that element to this offense because, again, before his signing, you're looking at it, it's all intermediate type options on the Patriots offense. They didn't have that true guy that can be a playmaker down the field. Well, guess what? They paid Nelson Agholor to do exactly that, to go stretch the field, to give Cam Newton a target 20-plus yards down the field, which John New can, Hunter Henry probably not. But you got Jacoby Myers, Julian Edelman. Like, there's no other guys that with true burning speed like Nelson Agholor. And if you're talking about Kendrick Bourne, again, this is a guy has shown time and time again. If he's your wide receiver 4, let's just say, and he can contribute in the red zone as well, he can be a really good, efficient option for Cam Newton.
He's probably better than any of the other tertiary receivers that they had last year. And I would say they still, if anyone watched the I Am Athlete podcast, the Ocho Cinco and Brandon Marshall's podcast that Cam Newton was on, they were like, yo, you need a dog. Like, you need a guy. And N'Keal Harry is clearly not that dude. You need Rashad Bateman at 15. You need Jaylen Waddle at 15. You need your number 1 receiver because this is nice. These are depth receivers. Like Nelson Agholor, in a perfect world, can become your number 2 receiver. I think that's his ceiling. But you need a number 1 still. And I think Rashad Bateman's firmly in the target sight lines of New England at number 15.
I also think, again, you mentioned having Agholor on one side, putting Jaylen Waddle.
They just take Kyle Pitts and ruin everyone.
I was going to say, imagine, though, you got Nelson Agholor on one side, you put Jaylen Waddle on the other, you got the 2 more possession guys in the middle with those 2 tight ends. That could be a lot of fun. Now,
it could be. You definitely need another guy, though, and it's probably in the draft that you get him. And low-key, I don't feel like they're going to do it at 15. I feel like they're going to try and put like Terrace Marshall in the second round and think he's going to be their number 1 receiver. I think Rashad Bateman to the Patriots at 15 is a great fit, and it would round out this receiving core because suddenly you have, if Rashad Bateman's the player that me and you both think he is, we think he can come in right away and be a number 1 receiver, an X receiver, and potentially grow into like an Allen Robinson type player. If you inserted a young Allen Robinson into this offense, suddenly you have a nice receiving core and you got 2 tight ends. You got a stable of running backs that can all get things done on the ground. And then suddenly you have a decent offense. You obviously lost Joe Thuney and you might lose David Andrews as well, but you did add Trent Brown back. So the offense for New England is clearly improved from what was last year. That was a lot of New England talk. So we could probably move in to the next signing that we had here. And I already teased
rival.
it. Yeah. The New York Jets went out and signed Corey Davis. Really, honestly, it's really hard to envision Corey Davis, 3 years, $37.5 million, by the way. It's really hard to envision Corey Davis signing with the Jets as an upgrade at any point to what we thought that Corey Davis could do. It's not the Adam Gase Jets anymore, so it's not a complete train wreck there, but he's likely expected to anchor that passing game along with maybe a potential rookie that they would draft at 23 or in the second round. But either way, this means that Corey Davis, as of right now, is the number 1 receiver on that team and will likely see a lot of Tre'Davious White. He'll likely see a lot of Xavier Howard, and he'll likely see a lot of Stephon Gilmore. That's 6 games in a year that you're going to see. Where do you think those 3 corners are among the league best? Probably all 3 might be top 5 corners in the league.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I mean, and not to mention, I wouldn't be shocked because we heard the news that Adoree Jackson was released by the Tennessee Titans. I wouldn't be surprised if Bill Belichick just said, oh, let's just bring him in and let's just add to our secondary because we can do that because we're the Patriots. I wouldn't be shocked if they did that type of move. Regardless, you mentioned you got the secondary of the Dolphins with 2 of the top 6 or 7 quarters in the league with Howard and Byron Jones. You got the Patriots, who still have Stephon Gilmore, who, when he's healthy, when he's on his game, has a claim to be the best in the league.
And a number of other good corners on that team, too, and a good secondary in general. And then you have Tre'Davious White in the Bills secondary. Yeah. So that's not good for Corey Davis. I think we've seen Corey Davis in this position before. When he was pressured to be the number one receiver of a team, it didn't work out. And I'm not saying Corey Davis is clearly a better player than he was back then when he was pressured to be the number one for Marcus Mariota and the Titans back in 2017 and 2018. But this is a move that I don't really like for Corey Davis's value. I wouldn't say he's like a sell necessarily, because I think everyone probably shares this notion that this doesn't help Corey Davis. He does help whoever plays quarterback for that team, whether it's Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, or Trey Lance or whatever. He does help whoever plays quarterback, but overall it's a big stock down on Corey Davis's overall fantasy value, because there's probably 6 or 7 other landing spots, including going back to the Titans, that would have been much better for his fantasy output next year.
For sure. So we can transition into your team, re-signing the big man himself, the partier himself, the shotgunner himself. We're talking about Rob Gronkowski, tight end. 1 year, $10 million deal. I mean, this guy is just, he's coming back. He's running it back with his boy in Florida. He's running it back with Tommy B. They're going to have some fun. They're going to drink some beers, and they're going to get another Super Bowl. That's what their plan is going to be. Anyways, he proved he can still be a productive tight end in the NFL in 2020. I mean, couple years off, he stepped back in, was a top 8 overall tight end at the position this year.
Yeah, and got off to a very slow start too. So if he comes in, obviously last year he was coming off of a year that he didn't play football. So, and plus the offense was new, and obviously the quarterback chemistry wasn't, but the whole offense was gelling for the first couple weeks of the season. So Gronk and the Bucs offense should be off to a faster start than they were last year, assuming we have OTAs and stuff as well. So I think this is a move that was really expected. We're probably going to get into that in a second, but this is a move that everyone expected to happen. They run the 2 and 3 tight end sets in Tampa Bay, and everyone knew that Gronk was retiring if he didn't play for the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. He wasn't going anywhere else. There was a report that he might have gone to the Bills or something. I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, no shot he was going to the Bills. I mean, this guy was signing with Tampa, or he just was not playing football.
Exactly.
The main difference that could be at effect here in terms of what we saw from Gronk from a fantasy perspective in 2020 versus what we could see in 2021 is OJ Howard coming back from injury is number one. If OJ Howard is back, we should see them split the snaps a little bit more 2 tight end sets. And in general, that's going to affect Rob Gronkowski's eventual target expectation. Another one, if they add a receiving type back, let's just say cough, cough, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, James White.
Already showing interest in, yeah. And apparently they did offer money to Leonard Fournette, who's weighing his options. So,
yeah, like I think James White he's going to be a buck. We know it at this point. And I don't think his role changes that much because he's still going to be the main tight end threat from that position. He's never really been a huge volume guy for them, even last year. But it could affect his ceiling. Again, we may not see that top 5 teetering top 6 type production we saw at the end of last season. We could see more so a low end tight end 1 from Gronk going into 2021. So that being said, again, you mentioned it, the stock is still a hold because it was expected, but we could see a slight difference in terms of the distribution of targets going into 2021.
Yeah. I think the offense in general should be better from the regulars. Like, I think what you saw in the playoffs is probably what you're going to get in the season. Because they were fully gelled by that point, and everyone is pretty much back. Like the only 2 guys on the offense that are unsure if they're coming back or not are Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette. And honestly, I think Antonio Brown's addition actually disrupted the chemistry last year rather than added to it. And you saw that once they got into the playoffs, then the chemistry was established. And Leonard Fournette, I really hope he isn't back as a Tampa Bay Buck because I just don't want him on my team. He was good.
Playoff Lenny, bro.
He was good in the playoffs, but I don't think he's very good. So I don't want him on my team. And I think he's going to cost more than I would want to pay him. So overall, Buccaneers re-sign Rob Gronkowski. He should be, borderline tight end 1 next year in fantasy. Obviously, it's going to depend on if Antonio Brown comes back, as well as what OJ Howard's condition is, because he tore his Achilles. So there's a good chance that he's not ready for training camp, or maybe he's slow to start off the season or whatever. And who knows? Maybe he even gets traded. There's trade rumors about OJ Howard every single offseason. So,
just send him to the Cowboys for a 4th round pick. You know?
Yeah, Jesus. I think that's all we could get for him at this point, actually, to be honest. Okay, sure. So the next move that we have here, I'll try and combine these just because they're both on the same team. But the Jacksonville Jaguars made 2 moves of note. I'll talk about Marvin Jones first, just because it actually just recently happened. But They signed him 2 years, $14.5 million. I think this is just such a Jags move, to be honest. It likely means that DJ Chark's rumors that he might be on the trade block or might be getting moved. I think that is true. I think they're probably trying to shop him right now. And Marvin Jones gives them a piece that, I mean, it makes DJ Chark expendable because they have similar skill sets. As of now, though, the Jags, if they keep the receiving core that they currently have a formidable trio of receivers with Shenault, with Chark, and with Jones for Trevor Lawrence to work with once he is drafted. And that definitely helps out a young quarterback to have three somewhat experienced, Marvin Jones definitely really experienced receivers to throw to. So overall, I think this is kind of a stock up on Trevor Lawrence. It shows that they're willing to build around their projected new quarterback. And then I would say it's probably stock down on Chark and Shenault, obviously, because adding new weapons to an offense just dilutes your target volume overall. So
I mean,
I don't mind the move from an NFL perspective, but it probably just kind of makes me less interested in every option that they have at receiver.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of know what you're getting with Marvin Jones. He's just one of the most safe receivers in this entire class. Again, 2 years, $14.5 million, and I think is a fantastic signing in terms of value. Because I mean, when it's all said and done, if this guy's plays 16 games in a season, you should expect roughly 950 yards, 6 to 8 touchdowns. Is probably what he's going to give you. Again, last year in Detroit had 980 and 9, just for reference. Marvin Jones is a really good outside receiver, really good number 2 complementary type receiver. And especially if you're getting Trevor Lawrence coming at number 1 overall, you need a guy that he can depend upon right away. And Marvin Jones is one of the savviest in the entire free agency pool. So I really like the fit from an NFL, from a quarterback perspective. But again, as you mentioned, it's obviously going to affect the output of those other 2 receivers because there's more pie, man. There's not more pie. There's more people eating the pie. Exactly. Marvin Jones is going to attack into their production one way or another. And that's not good news if you have a guy like Chark, if you have a guy like Shenault. But overall, I like it from a point offensive perspective. Anyways, we can talk about another offensive piece that
Chark is a guy I'd be willing to buy low right now, though, because there's rumors he's going to the Ravens and like this move in general. I think people are really down on DJ Chark. And if, let's say, for example, he does get moved to a great situation, somehow maybe they trade him to like the Bengals or something, or they trade him to, I don't know, the Packers or the Titans. Like that is a move that people won't expect. So if people are trying to sell the crap out of DJ Chark right now, I'd be willing to buy in and see what he's worth, because I think Shenault is the guy that everyone's obsessed with. And I think they're forgetting that DJ Chark is still a pretty productive receiver that can be a wide receiver too in fantasy. So the other move that the Jags did was they signed Carlos Hyde to a 2-year, $6 million deal. Does it help James Robinson that Chris Carson didn't sign there? Of course. Like, obviously, it's definitely good news that they didn't sign a huge name running back for James Robinson. But Hyde is still one of those dudes that coaches love. He's restricted guys like Nick Chubb and Chris Carson in the past by his ability to basically do everything. He can catch passes. He can pass protect. So this does downgrade James Robinson slightly. I would have liked to have seen them sign someone just completely like useless, like just, I don't know, whoever knows. But they also did sign a kick returner who can play running back as well in Jamal Agnew. So they are adding to the position.
Yeah,
and
wait, let's tack into that for a second.
He got $8 million a year, $7 million a year.
He got more money
than Marvin Jones.
They signed Marvin Jones for. Anyways,
crazy.
That was weird, but yeah, you touched up upon it. I mean, Carlos Hyde, yes, it's not Chris Carson. Yes, it's not Leonard Fournette, or it's never going to be Leonard Fournette because they cut him for a reason. But you get the point. They didn't sign a huge name, top of the pie type running back in free agency. They signed a Carlos Hyde. However, the familiarity that he has with Urban Meyer, again, we're talking about a guy who played college when Urban Meyer was the head coach of Ohio State. There's going to be usage here. He's not just going to be a redundant.
We did this with J.D. McKissick last year. Remember, we're just like, oh, J.D. McKissick is nothing, right? Antonio Gibson's getting all the work. Like, he's going to be used. And Carlos Hyde, we saw this again last year with Robbie Anderson and the Matt Rule Temple connection, that Robbie Anderson severely impacted DJ Moore for the first like 6 weeks of the season, until Matt Rule and Joe Brady got more comfortable with him. So if nothing else, this could mean that James Robinson's workload is down early in the season. And another thing is too, I don't think they're done at running back. I think they're going to add maybe a 3rd, 4th, 5th round rookie as well. And if there's 2 guys that are added to this backfield, that in my opinion, Carlos Hyde would have clearly been the 2nd best running back on the team last year. If they add another guy to that backfield, in addition to some of the guys that they currently have, it just dilutes James Robinson's workload, because let's not kid ourselves. James Robinson's a good running back, but he's not a great running back. He needs a big workload to be an RB1, and he had the best workload in the league last year. He had 85% opportunity share of the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. And if that's moved down to 65%, which is still feature back usage, it's still the best.
Aaron Jones.
It's more than Aaron Jones. It's still like Ezekiel Elliott usage. It's still feature usage. So this is a bad offense. It should be a bad offense unless Trevor Lawrence is just a freaking monster in his rookie year. It's a rookie quarterback, and they're going to have unfavorable scripts because they still have a bad defense, and it's a new coaching staff, which means the offense could get out to a slow start in general. He's a mid RB2. That's how I've always looked at him. Yeah. That's how I'm going to continue to look at him. He's not an RB1. His ceiling is low-end RB1 production, but I don't see that as very likely unless Trevor Lawrence is just like a freaking phenom when he comes in.
There was a poll the other day on Twitter. It was like, who would you rather have going into 2021, James Robinson or Ezekiel Elliott? And
There's no way anyone should ever answer that question with James Robinson. One, Ezekiel Elliott is better as a player. Two, he's in a far better situation. And three, he is guaranteed a workload, and the team has a big-time investment in him in his contract.
And just look at scoring opportunities alone. Like Ezekiel Elliott, I think his floor next year is 11, 12 total touchdowns. If you told me right now that James Robinson would have 11, 12 touchdowns next year, I would say, yeah, well, you know what? That's probably about his ceiling because I don't see much more than that out of that Jacksonville offense, particularly with what they have going on there from a management standpoint.
He only had 10 last year with that huge workload that he has.
Yes.
So if his workload decreases at all, and Carlos Hyde is a guy that can get it done on the goal line too, and we saw that in his relief of Chris Carson throughout his injury-riddled season last year, Carlos Hyde's going to be involved. That's basically the point of this. Yeah. Is he involved a lot? Probably not. But is he going to piss you off if you own James Robinson? Absolutely.
Like, could he be what Mark Ingram was for the Ravens this year? 75 type carries, let's just say 15, 20 targets.
I think he's going to be more annoying in the valuable stuff. The receiving work, he might get more than people think. And the goal line work, he might get more than people think. And James Robinson obviously needs those type of touches to reach RB1 type potential. So the last signing that we're going to talk about of the notable ones, and then we'll kind of just breeze through the last notable ones. Honestly, this one might have even been in the not notable things, but
it's notable.
So go ahead and talk about Andy Dalton.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why it's notable is because he's expected to be the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Again, talking about Andy Dalton, former Dallas Cowboy, former Cincinnati Bengal over here, signing a 1-year, $10 million deal with the Chicago Bears. Ew. Like, yuck. Like, disgusting. I can't complain because at least the Cowboys will get a 4th-round comp pick for it. But, I mean, if in all seriousness, expect more of the same for these Bears weapons. I mean, Andy Dalton could provide more stability than what we saw from Trubisky, what we saw from Nick Foles this past year.
I think it's literally the definition of a lateral move. He's exactly the same as Nick Foles.
Yeah, I mean, basically what this move does is like, oh, yeah, we're in quarterback purgatory for another year because that's basically what signing Andy Dalton is if he's not going to be your back.
I would have just saved your money and rolled with Nick Foles if you're going to do this.
And honestly, I mean, I guess you could say he still kind of helped Amari Cooper sustain last year. I mean, 13.97 PPR points per game, which even that wasn't even that great. Would have been the wide receiver 29. However, this, again, keep in mind, this was with Amari Cooper sharing the field with CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, and Andy Dalton only on pace for 484 total passing attempts across a 16-game sample size. There should be more attempts, in my opinion, than 484. If we're talking about Chicago, it should be probably around the low 500 area because 484 is tremendously low. That's like Baltimore Ravens type low. And again, when you're comparing the situation, Allen Robinson doesn't have any other mouths that have to be fed along with him. So overall,
Allen Robinson's even there, man. I wouldn't shock me if Allen Robinson held out and didn't sign his tag and then got traded before the season.
And if he does, I mean, again, the stock, it's stagnant. Just expect more of the same. I mean, this should still be a guy who should be a solid low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2, with enough sustainable volume to truly keep him at that type of area, but not a real ceiling to be that top 5 receiver, top 3 receiver on the season because of that quarterback and because of that offensive situation. Again, if I'm Allen Robinson, I want completely
out. Get me out, literally. Like to me, this tells me the one thing that this does tell me is that Russell Wilson probably not a thing for the Chicago Bears because I don't think they would have signed Andy Dalton if they intended on throwing the farm at the Seahawks for Russell Wilson. So it might be indicative that they can't get Russell Wilson. So If nothing else, yeah, like quarterback purgatory all the way. If you were going to do this, I would have just held Nick Foles, used him for this year if you didn't intend on bringing Trubisky back, and just see what happens in the draft. Maybe Trey Lance slips a bit. You can go up and maybe get him. But otherwise, I wouldn't have forced anything. And this, to me, feels like you just made a move to make a move. And I think it was a waste of $10 million.
Just for the record, Andy Dalton got $2 million less. Actually, Andy Dalton's move, I think the incentives could take it up to $14 million for the year. And just for the record, that's $2 million less right now, the $10 million, than what Jameis Winston got for the Saints.
And Fitzpatrick got.
So, I mean, overall,
you're still paying Nick Foles something around that range too.
Yeah, the Bears are just a fucking mess. I'm sorry if you're a Bears fan, but
I mean, they're making panic moves because their GM and their coach are on the hot seat. And I think it's probably the end of Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy this time next year. So, other moves, just
highlights.
These off the cuff, just because they don't really mean much for fantasy. But the Giants running back Devontae Booker. I mean, not really a big deal for me. He's probably like what Dion Lewis was last year, and you got to ask yourself, what was Dion Lewis worth last year? Really nothing. He was on the waiver wire the entire season. When Saquon went down last year, it was Wayne Gallman, not Devontae Booker. I don't think Devontae Booker takes over Wayne Gallman's role. I think he takes over Dion Lewis's role, who's also a free agent. So nothing notable there. Texans signed Tyrod Taylor, 1 year, $12.5 million. He's their backup quarterback. Maybe he's a contingency plan. If Deshaun Watson holds out, you could start a guy that started in the league before, but either way, not really interesting from that perspective either.
Tyrod got more than Jameis for the record. Anyways, but this is the big one from the other moves. The Chiefs released Damian Williams.
Is it a big one, though?
It is a big one because let's be honest here. The main detractor from CEH's value is, they have competition for touches. Guess what? Everybody who argued Damian Williams last year, argued Le'Veon Bell last year. Guess what? Neither of them are going to be on this team going.
Darrell Williams also was re-signed, like for a very cheap amount of money, just from he's back. Definitely. So they let Damian Williams go. They re-signed Darrell Williams for like $2 million or something like that. So pretty much
Le'Veon's gone.
Yeah, and Le'Veon's gone. So if it is just Darrell Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Darwin Thompson, whoever else they have on the roster next year, it's good news for Clyde. But the thing with Clyde is that like he had this opportunity last year. Obviously, he was a rookie with no offseason, so it cut him slack a little bit. But I need to see it with Clyde. And he's a guy that it's all going to depend on his ADP for me. If he's a third-round pick, fourth-round pick, I'm willing to take a shot. But if he gets talked up into the second round, I'm going to be all the way out on him.
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to see where his ADP is because
it's all ADP for him.
Yeah, like if I can,
I want to hear that he looks great every practice. I want to hear that he looks awesome.
Like if I can get him on like the 2-3 turn type area, I'll be interested in that. If he starts finding his way into the mid to high second round, which could happen given the hype that we always see. Oh, he plays for the Chiefs. All the scoring opportunities. Oh, now he's going to get more of a workload. It's going to happen. Then I'm going to be out on him. But this could be an interesting development because you talked about a guy like James Robinson. If the circumstances were the same as we expect right now and nothing else was added, CH would probably
James Robinson.
Yeah, slightly. Yeah.
I think I would probably take him over James Robinson as well.
Like our RB 15, 16 type area is probably where I'd have him.
He's a mid RB2 that I need to get in the third round. This is the way I look at him. Both of those guys, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. So talk about a couple O-line moves before we wrap it up here. The bigger ones. I mean, I could talk about Ty Nsekhe to the Cowboys, but nobody really cares about that because he's the swing tackle.
Yeah, the needle movers from an NFL perspective every single year is always free agent signings, that O-line. It's usually not draft picks. Tristan Wirfs obviously is a freak of nature, and he severely upgraded the Bucs offensive line this year. But normally when we see the turnarounds, what we saw with the Browns last year, what we saw with the Rams a couple of years ago, it's usually free agent signings. And the Chargers, of the teams that made O-line moves, were definitely the biggest winners in terms of upgrading their offensive line because they got all-pro center Corey Linsley from the Packers, who surprisingly paid Aaron Jones the same amount of money that Corey Linsley paid. And then they also signed, I think he was the right tackle of the Steelers the past couple of years,
Matt Hyler.
And he has inside-outside versatility, so they basically can use him wherever they see fit, whether it's guard, whether it's tackle. I think he's probably going to play guard by the sounds of it. So tackle, obviously, still a big need for the Chargers. But they do shore up their interior, and they're probably still looking at an offensive tackle at 13 in the draft. If they are able to add a Christian Darrisaw or something like that, or even Rashawn Slater in the draft, this is an offensive line that could be severely improved going into next year. 100%.
And quickly, we're going to touch upon the other couple moves that are huge, but somewhat, it's not breaking news, but news nonetheless. Malcolm Brown signing with the Dolphins 21 minutes ago, reported by Ian Rappaport. I don't know. I mean, just goes to show that Cam Akers, another guy gone out of that situation. He was fine regardless, but just a little teaser that we had to touch upon. Yeah, and talking about the other two offensive linemen, let's start off with the big fish of the free agency pool. And fuck the Chiefs, man. How do they do this? Like they cut both their tackles. Everybody starts talking shit about their O-line, and then they just go inside the highest priced offensive lineman in free agency in Joe Thuney. 5 years, $80 million, $16 million per year. Where are they getting this money?
They restructured Mahomes' contract and Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones all had their contracts restructured. So
the cap is a hoax.
Pardon?
Cap is a hoax.
Yeah, cap's a hoax. It's basically what it is. But Joe Thuney obviously solidifies one spot of their offensive line. They still got work to do. I expect them to probably add a tackle or two in free agency or in the draft. Maybe they make a run at Orlando Brown or something like that. That would make a lot of sense for the Chiefs. They definitely need to rebuild this offensive line. Before I can speak on Clyde and Mahomes and the rest of the offensive line concerns, I need to see what the final product looks like. And I don't think they're done yet. So another thing that of note, I think Kevin Zeitler also signs with the Baltimore Ravens, shores up the spot that Marshall Yonda left blank when he retired. So I think that's a good move for them. They're a run-first team. Interior O-line is definitely more valuable to them than it is for most teams, given the scheme that they run and given the fact that they run the ball as much as they run the ball. So Kevin Zeitler, definitely a nice value signing for the Ravens. It probably shores up a spot of their offensive line as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. Zeitler was a really good signing. Again, getting released by the Giants, signs with the team in the Ravens. I can assure
you he's going to be better with the Ravens than he was with the Giants.
100%.
He has around him on the Ravens offensive line.
Yeah, like 100%. I'm excited, and I was already a good amount higher on Lamar Jackson compared to the general consensus and what they've basically been seeming like. Like everybody wanted to make it a narrative of hating Lamar Jackson because
he's been a guy that everyone's kind of throwing behind the dudes like Kyler Murray and stuff. And I'd still rather have Lamar personally than some of those guys in that range. So yeah, it definitely helps Lamar, definitely helps Dobbins, Edwards, whoever else is in that offense. So that's it, guys. That's all the free agents that have happened thus far. As we said, it's about 6:40 Eastern Standard Time right now. If any signings, watch Kenny Golladay sign in like 20 minutes once we sign out of here. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll probably do another free agency recap in like a couple days or so, probably Friday or something like that. So keep your eyes on the lookout for that. Hopefully we have Juju and Golladay and Will Fuller and Chris Carson signed by then, and we can talk about the more big fish in terms of the wide receiver market and free agency. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Anything else, Danny?
Yeah, with that being said, if you made it this far in the video, comment protein shake because I just downed one while we were recording if you guys were paying attention. Anyways, we'll see you guys a couple days. Update you on more signings. Peace out, y'all.